Why Watson actually controlled Sherlock and how this makes you unstoppable. The silent manipulation. Why Watson actually controlled Sherlock and you had no clue. You've been lied to about who really held the power in literature's most famous duo. Everyone thinks Sherlock Holmes was the genius, but I'm about to reveal a disturbing truth that will flip your world upside down. What I am going to show you in the next few minutes will shatter everything you believed about success and power. Brace yourself because this revelation could change your life forever. The 48 Laws of Power is Rule 1 says, never outshine the master, but 99% of people interpret this completely wrong. They think it means being submissive, being weak, accepting crumbs. Bullshit. Watson wasn't just some sidekick. He was the real mastermind of the situation, using a strategy so sophisticated that people still don't get it today. While Sherlock was showing off like a peacock, Watson was silently controlling the entire narrative. Think about this. Who do you know better, Sherlock Holmes or Arthur Conan Doyle? Obviously Sherlock, right? But here's the masterstroke. Watson is the one telling all the stories. He had the ultimate power to decide how Sherlock would be remembered for eternity. Watson observed every move, every flaw, every vulnerability of Sherlock. He knew all the secrets, but never used them against him. Instead, he transformed them into pure power. That's the difference between amateurs and true strategists. Most people make the fatal mistake of wanting to be the center of attention. They need to prove they're the smartest in the room, that they have the best ideas, that they deserve recognition. And you know what happens? They become targets. Their bosses, colleagues, and even friends start seeing them as threats. But Watson? He was invisible until the right moment. He let Sherlock shine while building his own network of influence behind the scenes. Sherlock's ego was the tool Watson used to control him without him realizing it. Rule number 1 isn't about humility, it's about lethal strategy. It's about understanding that real power doesn't need a spotlight. In fact, the spotlight is a trap that exposes your weaknesses to potential enemies. Imagine if Watson decided to compete directly with Sherlock. What would happen? Sherlock would feel threatened, use all his genius to destroy Watson, and both would lose. But Watson was too brilliant to fall into that primitive trap. Practical challenge. For the next 3 days, in any social or professional situation, I challenge you to never be the center of attention. In meetings, ask questions that make your boss look even smarter. Let the credit go to others. But observe everything, every reaction, every word, every power dynamic. You'll discover something disturbing. When you're not competing for attention, people completely drop their guard. They reveal information they would never share if they saw you as competition. That's real power, having total access without raising suspicion. If you're ready to embrace this revolutionary strategy, smash that like button to let me know you got the message. Comment Watson if you're ready to become an invisible master of influence. And subscribe right now, because we'll show you how this innocence can be your most devastating weapon. The killer innocence. How being invisible gives you supernatural powers. If you thought part 1 was intense, buckle up, because now I am going to reveal Watson's most sinister secret, a secret so powerful it can transform you into an unstoppable force in any environment. Watson discovered something most people will never understand. Fake innocence is the most lethal weapon that exists. While everyone fights to prove their worth, the real predator disguises himself as a lamb and devours the competition from within. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to admit. When you're seen as harmless, people don't just drop their guard, they invite you into the inner circle. They share secrets, plans, fears, and ambitions. You become everyone's confessor. Watson wasn't just the narrator of Sherlock's adventures, he was the invisible puppet master, pulling all the strings. Think about it. In all the stories, who decides which details to include? Who chooses how to portray each character? Who controls the perception of millions of readers? Watson. This is the difference between amateur power and professional power. Amateurs want to be seen. Professionals want to be indispensable. And nothing makes you more indispensable than being the person who just helps, but actually knows all the secrets. Imagine you're in a company. Your boss has an important meeting with investors. Who's he going to call? The arrogant employee who always tries to steal the show, or the Watson who always makes him look brilliant? obvious. Watson doesn't just go to the meeting, he becomes the indispensable right hand. But here's the diabolic twist. While your boss thinks he's using you, you're collecting privileged information, building strategic relationships, and mapping the entire power structure of the company. You become a living encyclopedia of critical information. Rule number 1 teaches us that invisibility is invincibility. When nobody sees you as a threat, you can move freely through power circles. You can influence decisions, plant ideas, and even manipulate situations, all while maintaining your reputation as a team player. Watson knew Sherlock needed him more than he needed Sherlock. Without Watson, Sherlock would just be an eccentric loner talking to himself. With Watson, he became an immortal hero. That dependence was Watson's secret power. He became indispensable without Sherlock realizing it. Extreme challenge. Choose one situation in the next 3 days where you normally try to impress or stand out. Could be a presentation, business lunch, conversation with your boss, doesn't matter. I want you to do the opposite of what your ego is screaming to do. Be the perfect supporting character. Ask smart questions that make the other person feel brilliant. Show genuine interest in their ideas. Let them shine while you absorb every detail, every nuance, every vulnerability they unconsciously reveal. You'll discover something shocking. People will start seeking you out more. They'll want your opinion. They'll share more information with you. They'll include you in conversations that were previously private. Your influence will explode without anyone noticing what's happening. If you're ready to master this dangerous art of strategic invisibility, destroy that like button. Comment, sidekick, if you understand that real power lies in being underestimated. And secure your subscription because part 3 will reveal how you can use this information to control any narrative. The power of the pen, how controlling the narrative makes you a god. What I'm about to reveal now is so powerful, it might seem downright scary. Watson discovered the supreme secret of power. Whoever controls the story, controls everything. And you're about to learn how to use this nuclear weapon in your own life. Here is a question that will fry your brain. Why is Sherlock Holmes more famous than any real detective who ever lived? The answer will give you chills. Because Watson controlled the narrative. He had the divine power to decide how the story would be told for eternity. This is the most disturbing truth about power you have probably never heard. It doesn't matter how smart, talented, or brilliant you are if you don't control how your story is told. You control nothing. Watson wasn't just a passive scribe. He was an architect of perceptions. Every word he wrote shaped how millions of people would see Sherlock. He could emphasize successes and minimize failures. He could create a legend or destroy a reputation. That's absolute power. In your real life, this translates to something revolutionary. Be the person who documents everything. In meetings, you take the notes. In projects, you organize the data. In important conversations, you record the commitments. It might seem like administrative work, but it's pure strategic gold. Why is this so devastatingly effective? Because whoever has the record has the official truth. When conflicts arise, and they always do, where does everyone look? To the records that you maintain. You become the single source of truth, the oracle everyone consults. Picture this scenario. Your boss promises something in a meeting, then later tries to deny it. Who has the power in that situation? The person who thinks they remember, or the person who has the exact record of what was said? Watson knew memory is fallible, but documentation is immortal. But here's the masterstroke. Watson didn't just record facts, he interpreted them. He added context, explained motivations, created connections. He wasn't just a recorder, he was a film director creating the official version of reality. The coldness of the pen that Watson mastered isn't emotional coldness, it is surgical precision in narrative construction. When you document something, you're essentially saying, this is the version that matters. This is the truth that will remain for history. In a world where everyone's too busy to pay attention to details, the person who really pays attention and records everything becomes indispensable. You become the institutional memory, the keeper of secrets, the only one who really knows what happened. Watson understood that Sherlock could be the hero of the adventures, but he would be the god who decides how those adventures would be remembered. and that difference is everything. Heroes die and are forgotten. Gods create eternal legacies. Critical mission: in your next important project, whether at work, school, or even a family event, volunteer to be the organizer or documenter. Create meeting minutes, record decisions, organize timelines, maintain commitment lists. Do this with obsessive excellence. Be the person everyone seeks out when they need to know what was decided in the last meeting or who was responsible for that task. Feel the power that comes from being the official source of truth. You'll discover something disturbing. People will start consulting you before making important decisions. They'll want your version of events. You'll become the filter through which reality is interpreted. That's power. Few understand, but you now master. If you understand the nuclear power of controlling narratives, smash that like. Comment, Chronicler, if you're ready to become the author of your own reality. And don't miss the final part, because I'll reveal how to unite all these strategies into an unstoppable formula. The final transformation: how to become an invisible master, an unstoppable force. If you've made it this far, congratulations. Your mind is no longer the same. You now possess Watson's 3 nuclear weapons: strategic discretion, killer innocence, and total narrative control. But now I'll show you how to unite all this into a formula that will transform you into an unstoppable force of nature. Most people live life in reactive mode. They respond to what happens to them. But you, after mastering the Watson mindset, will live in creative mode. You'll create the situations you want to experience. That's the difference between being a pawn and being the player who moves the pieces. Here is the final truth that will blow your mind. Watson never needed to compete with Sherlock because he was playing a completely different game. While Sherlock struggled to solve mysteries, Watson was building an empire of influence that would last forever. Think about this shocking reality. Today, centuries later, when you think of brilliant detectives, you automatically think of Sherlock Holmes. But who created that mental association in billions of people? Watson. He literally programmed humanity's collective mind. That's divine power. The Watson ritual I am about to teach you is your supreme weapon for dominating any social or professional situation. It is a mental protocol that will reprogram your brain to think like an invisible master instead of an amateur desperate for attention. Watson Ritual: 5 minutes that change everything. Minute 1: Power affirmation. My discretion isn't weakness, it's my super weapon. While others show off and expose themselves, I move in shadows, collecting real power. Minute 2: Observation strategy. Today, I will observe everything, every reaction, every word, every micro-expression. I'll absorb information like a strategic sponge. Minute 3: Influence planning. I'll identify one person today and make feel smarter, more valued, more special, and through that person, I'll expand my influence network. Minute 4: Narrative control. I'll look for one opportunity today to document, organize, or record something important. I'll position myself as the source of official truth. Minute 5: Victory visualization. I see myself at day's end, having collected valuable information, strengthened strategic relationships, and advanced my goals without creating any enemies. This ritual isn't just mental preparation, it's a complete reprogramming of your social personality. In 30 days practicing this, you'll become a version of yourself you barely recognize, more influential, more respected, more powerful. Watson's genius is that he never needed to prove he was powerful. He simply was powerful. And true power doesn't need to be announced, it's felt by everyone around, even if they can't explain exactly why. You now have in your hands the secret formula that transformed a simple assistant into the true master of history's most famous duo. Use this formula wisely, because the power it generates is real and definitive. The game changed for you starting now. You're no longer an ordinary person fighting for crumbs of attention. You're a Watson, an architect of influence, a master of strategic invisibility, controller of narratives. Final mission: for the next 7 days, practice the Watson ritual religiously. Document your progress, observe changes in people's reactions, feel the power growing inside you. Then tell me in the comments how your life changed. If this journey transformed your perception of power and strategy, and hit that like button. Comment Master if you recognize yourself as the Watson you always were, but are now awakened. Share this transformative knowledge with those still trapped in the Sherlock mindset, because the world needs more conscious Watsons. And subscribe immediately to the channel, because what's coming next will take your power to levels you never imagined existed.